Okay, this mission is about delivering power lines, and the goal is to have the power line device be touching several of the white areas. The more different white areas in between those black lines that you can have it touching, the more points you get. For the most part, they're just pushing these out. That one ended up touching 4 different white areas, so that was good. They're just using timing on this. You've got a black line there. If you'd put a sensor on, you could sense when you get to the black line and get a more precise delivery. Here they're going to try to deliver some other things at the same time. You'll notice there's all kinds of apparatuses on the front of these robots. Sometimes they're delivering multiple things at the same time by combining things together and kind of hooking them together. In some of these competition tables, like this one, you were able to do that. You'll notice they delivered the windmills and the power lines all at the same time there, plus they also delivered some other things. Now sometimes you can push until you hit the wall, and then when it hits the wall, that stops you, and that helps locate exactly where you're going to be. These are some uranium, if I remember correctly, devices that they wanted to deliver. They've just kind of put everything on there and sent them out. You've got to read the rules real carefully on each mission to see exactly what the objectives are points wise, because there's points attached to the delivery of each item depending upon the placement of it. Now, whether or not that robot had a sensor underneath it that sensed the black line, I couldn't tell for sure. But anytime you've got black lines or a change in color, using a light sensor is a great way to better know exactly where you're at. Timing alone is the least precise way of getting this thing to work. Now remember, your goal is to get it to work exactly correctly 8 times out of 10 if you expect that it might work in competition, 9 times out of 10 if you really want it to work in competition, and 10 times out of 10 if you believe that it's actually going to work correctly in competition. Probably 90% of the time. If you're not getting it to work correctly 10 times out of 10, probably it's not going to work correctly in competition. Now this time they're positioning that dam over that blue waterway. Here they're going to try and position the telephone poles again. They're going to push these out, try to get them to cross so that the telephone or the power line device there was touching as many white spaces as possible. That one ended up touching 4 different white spaces. It kind of caught it and pulled it back, which was fortunate for them because that actually increased their score. Now you'll notice these folks are using a jig or a fixture to basically hold everything, and then they've got a light sensor, it looks like, on the very front of the robot. Whether or not they're actually turning that on, I can't tell right now. But it is critical that you use sensors if you want to be more precise. Timing, like we said, is your least precise way of doing things. Here they're going to take these trees and these power lines all out at the same time. That looked like that crossed over 3 white spaces. The maximum on that was skip 4. They're going to now deliver this dam, and it's got to be positioned just right over the top of the blue waterway. It didn't work out too well for them there. Here they're getting set up, and you'll notice they're checking exactly where the robot is sitting before you start is really, really critical. Using jigs or those little marks that are on the base area there to position your robot is a great way to make sure that robot is starting where you want. If it doesn't start where you want it to, it probably won't end where you want it to. And so using some other Lego parts to position it before you send it out to make sure that it's in the right spot. You don't want to use the 2x4 or the black 2x4 on the back of the table because that's not going to be very precise. You just want to use the markings on the mat and make sure you position your robot based on markings on the mat, because the mats are all guaranteed to be identical. The tables are not all guaranteed to be identical. That looked like that was a pretty good position there. We'll see how they do on this one. Could be that they got 4 white spaces. It was a little bit hard to tell. You'll notice they're adding things to this so that they try to accomplish multiple missions at the same time. One of the things that you generally want to do is when you touch the robot to start it, you want to have the robot programmed so that after you touch the button on the robot to start it, that it waits about a second before it starts. That way then your finger will not be still touching the robot when it takes off moving, and potentially your finger hitting the robot could cause the robot to skew off in some unwanted direction.